in Israel, and came here kind of at the same time. And
the beard we grew at different times. That's not a thing we coordinated. So.
Right. And I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. It seems like it was in the 60s now. It was a long time ago. So I spent a bunch of years in Boston, and I live in LA now. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I've done in 20 years. I started off as a piano player and musical director, and I toured for 10 years as a pianist and musical director with Tony Braxton, Christina Aguilera, New Kids on the Block, which was amazing. Who else? Brian McKnight, Eric Benet, Patti LaBelle. That was like my school. I was 25. I was leading the band, which was nuts. There's no computers on stage. It's just the real deal, you know? And I was playing piano and leading this huge band and her. So yeah, that was my school in a way. Who else? Colby Calais, Jason Derulo. I worked on X Factor for 2 seasons with Simon Cowell. So I did that for a while, and then I decided to stop doing that. I didn't like the touring life and that world, and I wanted to be a songwriter and producer, which is why we're all here. And what a road it's been. And so I decided to do that about 4 years ago, to just take that on and do it full time. And since then, I've worked with, well, my main gig has been with Rodney Jerkins, if you guys know who that is. Yes? No? No. Rodney Jerkins is a very famous producer. When he was 19, I think, he started working with Michael Jackson, and he did his last album, Invincible. He was executive producer of that album and did the whole album. And Rodney had big hits with Brandy and Beyonce and Bieber and on and on. And I started working for him and with him. And with him, we worked with Mary J. Blige, J-Lo, who else did I do? It just came out last week, Tamar Braxton. I did a song with her. And this year we've been working on Empire, thank you, and Star, 2 shows, 2 Lee Daniels shows. Also worked with Robin Thicke, which was incredible and crazy. Yeah, so I've been doing that. And also, I'm a coach on hitsongcoach.com, which launched today. We'll tell you more about that later. So now, on to Chen.
Well, cool. I can't believe I have to remind you half of the stuff you've done.
I forget.
I forget. So the first half of my story is basically identical to his half, since we went to high school together, and then we went to Berklee together. So he took care of that half. I was a bebop jazz guitar student with a secret hidden passion for pop song. And I moved out to LA, and I was playing sessions, and I was playing gigs, and I was doing all that, and just kind of stumbled into a writing situation, which turned out to be Hannah Montana, and which led into a lot of work with Disney and Hollywood, and with cuts with Miley, and with Demi Lovato, and Selena Gomez, and R5, and the Muppets, and Westlife, and Joe Jonas, and Zendaya, and so on, and stuff like that. And I've been producing and songwriting for a very long time, and I am an educator also. And as Davy pointed out, we recently started our education website, hitsongcoach.com, which is meant to inspire and empower artists and producers and songwriters to hone their skills and find their voice through content, coaching, workshops, etc. And it's a good thing, and check it out. So I wanted to talk a little bit, because songwriting and production isn't really something that we can do in an hour and a half, So when we started talking about doing this, we started talking about what are the kind of like big main concepts that we can talk about that are just crucial to a career in songwriting and production. I'm going to move the mic where my mouth goes. I'm not a singer, so that's not my thing. So we just started talking about it, and the first concept that came to mind for me is the idea that songwriting, and it should be, but it isn't treated as a discipline. Very much like playing an instrument is a discipline. If you studied piano or guitar or saxophone or trumpet or whatever you studied, you know, you've heard the old saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, right? And you practice and you practice and you practice. And when you study an instrument or any other creative endeavor for that matter, if it's art or filmmaking or everything, there's always traditionally been a very, very kind of standard way of going about getting there. You know, practice your scales, practice your arpeggios, you know, your chords, right? Songwriting has always seemed a bit more mysterious, you know? There's no, like, definitive way to write a song, you know? I mean, unless you guys know of one, you can tell me. I'm not sure. What there is, however, is there are so many things that we can do to practice songwriting, to get better at it. The same way practicing your scales and your arpeggios will make you a better technical instruments. There are things you can do as a songwriter that will make you a better writer. Off the top of my head, if I'm dealing, say, with lyrics, right? First thing that pops up in mind is something like object writing, right? Have you guys ever heard of object writing before? Right? So the idea of basically it's training. For those of you who don't know about it, it's, you know, I don't know, that power strip over there. If I picked that and I said, I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes and I'm going to write a paragraph about that power strip. You know, it doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be in song form. It doesn't have to be in essay form. It's just me describing it using all my descriptive skills. So we perceive the world with our senses, right? We have 5 senses that we can hear, see, smell, touch, taste. And did I say smell? I think I said smell. And, but there are other senses, right? We have other ways that we perceive the world, right? We have an emotional sense. We have, maybe when I was 3 years old, I touched a power outlet and it gave me a shock. And maybe now when I look at the power outlet, it brings up some sort of an emotion. And maybe that emotion brings out some sort of physical reaction. Maybe it hurt and it made me scared and my heart starts beating faster. We relate to everything around us in a million different ways. And spending 10 minutes a day just writing down, describing different objects, different feelings, different situations, okay, will unlock your descriptive abilities. You know, it will simply get you to a point where you're in the room writing and you are not so much thinking to yourself, how do I describe this thing in a poetic way? You're just sort of thinking, it just sort of pours out of you. It becomes instinct. The ability to describe something is second nature. And that way, you're not, you are not halting your creative process by trying to figure out the technical skill you need in order to achieve it. There are many different ones. One of the ones you had mentioned and we had talked about was the idea of analyzing and form and stuff like that, if you want to.
Yeah, taking hit songs or songs you like and analyzing the form and basically copying it. You know, seeing how many bars are in the verse, how many in the pre, how many in the hook. What does the melody do in the verse as far as the shape, and just copying it. Counting syllables, that's a big one. And borrowing it, that always works. Same goes for production as well. When do the drums come in? When does the bass come in? And just copying it and writing your own song, like in that template, in a way.
Right, and it's not copying in the sense like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to get blurred lines, right? And Marvin Gaye, and I'm going to go and I'm going to make that exact groove, and I'm going to copy that exact melody. That's not what we're saying. I mean, we're not saying copy other people's songs.
Right.
Study the masters. Study the people who have done it before. Study the way it's been done before. You know, we're like, there's a mix thing where when I first started learning how to mix, I was like, oh, and EQ this and compress that. No, I'm great, you know. And then I'd put on a reference track, and I'd realize how much I sucked, right? The same thing is true for everything. You know, you can't really learn in a vacuum. You're great, I'm sure. We're all great, individual, wonderful people, but we have to experience other people's work and how it's done for us to take what we need from that and turn it into our own, right?
Yeah. And I would say also that exercise with the power strip, I do that with production too. Right. So we all have like access to 1 million sounds and soft synths and samplers and all that. It is so beneficial to just take like 8 sounds and that's your template. That's what you're working with for the week maybe. And that's something I learned from Rodney also. He'll have a template with like 4 kick drums, 4 snares, 4 bass. That's it. And that's what he's working with. And like make something with that.
Right.
And
simplicity.
Yeah, yeah. And constricting yourself in that way often lets your creativity just open up. Because, you know, most of my time I spend searching for sounds, you know, so.
Moving buttons around until something sounds good.
Right. So constricting yourself is really, really helpful.
Right. It's actually, it forces you to be more creative. You have to do more with less. Right? And actually, that is the name of the game in songwriting, right? We're trying to convey an emotion, we're trying to tell a story, and we're really trying to do it in 3 minutes or less, 3.5 minutes or less, with the least amount of words, melody, lyric possible, right? If you have a song and it's got a melody that's straight up 16th notes all the way through, right? And a million stream of consciousness type lyric, you know, you're not really achieving anything. You have to simplify. Take away all the stuff you don't need. Same way a sculpture would look at like a piece of like marble or something and see the sculpture and realize that they have to take away things from it before they see the, you know, the finished work of art. It's this exact same thing. When we write, we have all these ideas and we need to simplify, limit ourselves, and get us to that nucleus of an idea there. So yeah, discipline, turning it into discipline, finding exercises that are not I'm sitting down to write, but let's say I start the day, 10 o'clock, sometimes I wake up at 10 o'clock, but you know, start the day, you wake up in the morning, you write for 10 minutes, put it away. You don't ever need to read it again. You don't even need to look at it again.
Right.
You know, it's not about what you did, it's about doing it.
Right.
Right?
Another exercise that I like to do is, and we talked about this too, one of the main tools that a modern songwriter uses is the iPhone or your phone with the voice memos. So, I mean, we live by that thing. I don't know how people wrote before.
I have no idea.
You know,
right?
because a lot of writing is improvising. And if you're not catching it, then it's just gone. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll turn that thing on and I'll just start writing. Let's say I'm doing verses. I'll do 10 in a row, just ideas. I promise you one of them is awesome. So that's another exercise. Or I'll do that with choruses.
Right.
I'll just write 10 in a row.
Or just the act of doing it will ignite something.
That's right. Know? And just turning on that thing, it's almost like you have an audience now because it's like recording in real time. So yeah, use that for sure.
You can't fool the recording.
That's
it
right.
Knows.
The tape don't lie.
So yeah, discipline.
Yeah, the next topic we wanted to talk about was persistence, right, and patience. I have so many stories about being patient and persistent because the first half of my career I was a musical director and piano player, and that's what people knew me as. And you know, moving to being a songwriter and producer is like the hardest thing to do, because if people know you as one thing, they're not going to call you for the other thing. So I had to literally quit that job. And
they did, though. I mean, for you.
I mean, it was hard, though. You know, I was working with all these people. You know, it's like Christina Aguilera. She knew me as her piano player. And even when it was time to record piano on her album, she would call the guy that played piano on her album, not the guy that plays piano for her live. Because she just knew that guy as that, and I was that. So changing how people look at you is like, in this industry, is really, really hard. It's almost like asking your plumber to like paint your, you know, bedroom. It's like, you're not going to do that, right? So patience. For example, we both started in Boston. We both played in bar bands, actually in the same one for a while. And then I played weddings for many years and clubs. And I remember my first big gig was Brian McKnight. And I remember his musical director came to a club that I was playing, and he said, I'm going to take you to play for McKnight with me. And I was so excited, and I went home. I bought all his albums at the time, Tower Records or whatever. And
I'm not that old.
You know, yeah, I am. And he did call a year and a half later. A year and a half later. And he said, are you ready? And I was ready. And then 2 weeks later, I was in LA and met McKnight and all that. Same with Babyface. I got called to play for him. And it didn't happen for like 3 years or something. So, you know, you have to be patient. You have to be persistent. You have to be at it. We also know a lot of people that went to school with us who don't do music anymore because they just weren't patient or persistent. So, yeah, so that's one example from like the playing side. Now, on the songwriting and production side, persistence and patience is everything, because I can't tell you how many times I've had meetings with A&Rs or sent songs to A&Rs or I've done projects and sent them out to people and like crickets, no response. Because people won't tell you, like, they usually will know, they won't say like no or like this doesn't fit.
Nobody in LA likes to say no.
No one says no.
Yeah.
They'll just not respond, and that's just that. And then you have to be like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try again next time. Right. So that act of picking yourself up and waking up the next day and writing another song and, you know, just keeping at it is the hardest thing sometimes. But there's no other way, because no one starts writing songs and wins Grammys the next week. It just doesn't happen. Anybody and everybody who's made it has been told no more times than yes. That's just the nature of it. Yeah. So be patient, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. I have, you know, I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have had many successes, but I have way more failures. Right. And every one of my failures, you know, patience and persistence are two sides of the same coin. And I have been doing this for a while, but still every time I hear a no, it's like a dagger straight through the heart, you know? And I don't care, you know, what project it is. I don't care if I wrote a song and somebody doesn't like it. And you guys, I mean, you're experiencing it. You'll experience it this week. You'll go, you'll play. Some people won't like the song. Some people will like the song. It hurts. But you know what? It should hurt, and it should have an effect on you. Because I guess what failure is the fire that persistence is forged in, right? It's how you get better. If we, we both started out as instrumentalists. And the idea of being an instrumentalist is you pick up an instrument. I remember the first time I picked up the guitar and I tried to play the chord, just get nothing, right? I failed. If I gave up, that would be the end of my musical career. That would be it right there. You have to fail and find the power, the energy, the drive to simply try again. Because there's no secret sauce here. It's not like, oh my gosh, if I had just put that A minor chord there instead of that other chord there, that song would have gotten cut. Or if I said the word to instead of it or something, that would have gotten cut. No, right. It's persisting and being patient, yes, but just trying again over and over. Yeah.
And we were talking over breakfast that in our industry, there's no such thing as an audition. Like for musicians, you have auditions, so you audition for gigs and stuff. But as a songwriter and producer, everything is an audition. Every time you have a writing session, every time you send your song out, that's an audition. Even if you got a cut on the last Rihanna album, next time she does an album, you still have to audition. You are not guaranteed to get in. You can speak on that. He's got so many cuts on TV shows, and he still has to pitch.
We were talking about over breakfast. I'm doing a really big project right now for somebody that I've done a lot of work for before, and it is, you're auditioning every time. You may have the credits, you may have the skill, you may have the know-how, but if you don't have the song, you don't have it. So, you know, persistent, write, and write smart too. We actually talked about this, and I'm going to digress a little bit because I have a ADD mind that just goes like this. But, you know, there's an adage, and I think it's really big in Nashville, and I mean, I believe it and everything, is that you have to get that thousands of songs under your belt. You have to write 1,000 songs. Write and write and write and write and write. I like that, but I always like to say that you have to also write smart. And what I mean by that is, if song number 2 is bad, that's to be expected. Song number 2 is bad. It's your second song. My second song sucked. If song number 878 is also bad, then there's a problem in your process, right? I don't mean like one-off bad. Like if you're consistently writing bad songs, you're doing something wrong. So the trick is going through that thousands of songs that you're going to write is to learn how to do it on purpose. I can't take credit for that. That's who's the 7, I forget his last name, Kacha?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, the idea is that you have to learn from each one of your failures. Each song that didn't work will show you how to do something that will work on the next one. So yes, write 1,000 songs, but write smart. Right. And you can track your progression and be persistent.
I remember when I started writing and producing, and you might not remember this, but I was playing, I was all over the world, traveling, and I started writing songs, and I thought my songs were so special, and then I would go visit my buddy in LA who was a songwriter, and I would play him my songs, and he'd be like, okay. And this was like, you know, I had like 20 songs under my belt, you know. And then he would say to me, he said, you know, I have to work on 150 songs a year to get 3 placed. And I said, shit. You know, and now I'm getting to no, I think I'm over the 1,000 songs now, but back then that seemed like Mount Everest, like I'm never gonna get to that. And getting through these songs that are painful to listen to even, you know. But it's persistence and patience, and the years just pile on, and you know, you just keep doing it, keep doing projects, just keep at it.
You know what keeps me going? There is a truth. There's 2 truths in a career in songwriting. Ready? Hold your breath.
I'm ready.
The first one is rejection. You will always experience it. Even after your 20th cut, you will always experience rejection. How you deal with it will determine whether or not you can hack it in the business. And the truth in songwriting. And what was the second one? I had 2, right? So the first one is rejection. No, I'm just. And the other one is, and this is the truth. Anybody in this room, everybody, at any moment, is 1 song away. That's absolutely true. You are 1 song away from the song that's going to be successful for you. Always. Today, you could go upstairs to your room and write a song, and that's the song that gets cut and becomes a hit. And that is what keeps you going. That is what will help with the persistence and the patience. I truly believe that. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Right. So that's persistence. And the other thing that we talked about, which is absolutely crucial to a career in songwriting, especially today, is collaboration. It's so rare. And in fact, I'm trying to think of the last time I looked at an album. The last time I looked at an album. But I'm trying to look at the last time I looked at the credits, and I saw 1 name written next to a song. I mean, that's some Diane Warren shit right there. I mean, like, you know.
Right.
So it's you have to collaborate. And the way I see it, all the music, your entire career consists of 2 trees, let's call them, okay? The tree on this side is all that goes into developing your competitive product in the style you're aiming for. Everything from learning how to write songs, from learning how to produce songs, or understanding the basics of structure, melody, whatever it takes to get your product, because at the end of the day, you guys are making a product. You're all small business owners trying to sell a product. To make your product competitive, that's one tree, everything that takes there. The other tree is cultivating and creating a network of professional relationships that will allow you to do something with all this great skill that you have there. Now, the two, while they're separate trees, their branches meet on top. People you will meet on this side of the tree will introduce you to people that will make this side of the tree better. And if you worked on your skills on this tree, it will be what introduces you to the people on this side. They're like, no, nobody's going to answer your call if you don't like your music. I mean, you know, they're not going to answer the email if they don't like the song. So both of them are important. And the only way you can achieve or consistently work on building your professional network and building your ability as a songwriter-producer is collaboration with everybody, always, wherever you go. And collaborating is hard.
Yes,
it's really hard. Mm-hmm. And for me, because I came up with songwriting kind of like in a vacuum a little bit. I wouldn't call it a vacuum. You know, David doesn't know this, but he was a really big influence on me. As you know, we went to high school together, and he's an amazing piano player.
Thank you.
Just saying. There's a piano right there. No, I'm just. But you know, I remember. You playing me a Sting record that I'd never heard before, or I remember or even introducing me to Pat Metheny, which was a big influence in my life, and I'd really never listened to before he played it for me. But that's what collaboration will do. Collaboration will show you things that you've never been exposed to, ideas that you never even would have begun to think about. And for me, when I started writing songs, I'd start by having a bad day, sitting in my bedroom, just plucking around on the guitar, you know, just kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. And a lot of the writing I did for a long time, and I suppose it's the same thing for everybody, was really by myself. Mm-hmm. And when the first collaboration arrived for me, it was really hard because, hey, I have this cool idea, check it out. And the other writer's like, eh. And as I mentioned before, right? And so the trick in collaboration, I think, aside from going through many different collaborations and working with many different artists and working with many different writers, is a mindset. When you walk into a room to collaborate with somebody, you have to understand that you're no longer working on your vision. You are creating a shared vision. Mm-hmm. And the first step for that is, you know, respect for your collaborators, mm-hmm. right? If I walked into a room with a writer that or somebody that I didn't like their ideas, or, you know, we didn't jive, it didn't work for me, that's not going to be a very productive collaboration, right. You know? And a lot of the collaborative efforts you go through, a lot of the sessions that you go through your career are not going to be great sessions. You're going to have days where you're in the room with people who are very nice people. There's nothing wrong with them, but you guys are not clicking musically, mm-hmm. and you are not clicking lyrically. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to be a matter of like, all right, well, this session is great, but,
right.
You know? And that's going to make it difficult to have another session with that person. I mean, I like I have the rule of 3, where I'll write with people like 3 times. And after 3 times, if I don't feel like we have a connection, a writing connection, then I'm not going to jump into setting up the next writing session, you know. But the minute you do have, if you have respect for the ideas, then you can trust somebody with your ideas. Then you can say, okay, I have this. Okay, I just went through a bad breakup, and you know, and I want to talk about it, and I want to write about it. How are you going to say that to a person who you wrote a song with before and you hated everything you've done? How are you going to trust somebody to nurture your ideas? And that's what you're doing. You are going into a room and you're making a baby with somebody you just met. You know? Mm-hmm. How are you going to trust them to raise that baby into a hit song? You know, unless you respect them, unless you understand that it's not your song you're writing. Mm-hmm. It's the song in the room.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, and if you've ever written with somebody else, we've all experienced, like when you have an idea, you say, oh, it should be this line, and then they're like, nah. And when that happens, it could happen like 3 times in a row, and then you watch the person just shut down, and they're just done. You know, so that's, you know, it's important to practice writing with other people because vibe is so important in a room. And I think collaboration a lot of times is like basketball, I guess. It's like you're passing the ball to somebody. When I was, you know, when I'm with Rodney in the room, a lot of times he'll just pass the ball to me and be like, what do you think? How should the chorus go?
Don't drop it.
Yeah, don't drop the ball. Just come up with something cool or you know, or expand on what he said or whatever's happening in the room. So a lot of collaboration is that, just knowing how to play ball with others, you know?
Yeah, it's about being generous. It's about being respectful, because you know what sucks? Hey, how about that? No, that sucks.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I've been there. And there is nothing that really sucks the vibe out of the room more than negativity, right? Don't be the no person in the room. Right. Even if you're having an off day, and we all do. Some days you are on fire, all your ideas great. Some days you can't remember how to string a sentence together, okay? Even if you're having a bad day, don't be the person that goes, no, no, I don't like that, no. Even if you don't like it, because that type of vibe, it just adds a little bit of negativity every time you say it. So if I'm having a bad day, right, and I don't like something, I've found that there's 2 ways to go about it. One is silence. And I've learned that silence, when you ask somebody, what do you think about it, and they don't say anything, they don't like it. Because if they do like it, they will say it. Trust me, we're all there to write a good song. So not saying anything is a good idea. And also adding. So if somebody says something to you and you say, see, I don't know about that. How about something like this?
Right.
Okay? Even if it's not the best idea you ever had, you know, there's that very famous saying, you know, dare to suck, right? But as long as you keep there's a creative juices flowing, right? There's a thing in improv where you always say yes, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that, if they've done that, when improvisers go on stage and they start like a new act or whatever in comedy, the rule is you have to say yes, you know? That is not the rule in songwriting, but the rule is that you have to keep it moving. No stops. I don't know, but what if keeps the conversation going. That will make you a better collaborator.
Right. And we always say egos are left at the door, and the best idea wins. It's not about, it's my idea, it's my lines. Best idea wins. I'd also like to add, as far as collaborating, how important it is to have passion projects. I have, in my work, I have like 4 money projects and like my career, like advancing my career projects. And then I have passion projects, albums or EPs that I make with my friends, and we send them into the world.
They're really good.
And it's so important, and that's another aspect of collaborating. So having a project that you know, if you're a singer-songwriter, like hook up with a producer or another singer-songwriter and make a band or a group, even if it's just for 1 EP. But having that as a project that you're working on for 6 months, a year, 4 years, whatever it is, and at the end of it you release something, will provide tremendous growth for you as an artist, as a musician, just working on a project, watching it through, because I work with a lot of art. I mean, that's my job. I work with singers and artists, and I find that one of the major hurdles that they have is releasing music. Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Nobody likes to release music. So
wait, it could be better. Wait, give me another day. I can tweak it.
So when you have a project with somebody else where it's both of your faces on the cover, or even put a bag over your face, I don't care, you know. When you have something like that, it's easier to release. Because the hardest button to press is upload to internet. That's the hardest thing to do. But that should be your goal, is to upload to the goddamn internet. And just be done with it, you know, and just move on to the next thing. Like I'm in the middle of 5 albums and 3 EPs right now that are going, and they're going to get released. I mean, that's my work. So collab in that way, release projects. And you know, when you release a project, it's kind of like setting off your bomb into the world, and you expect, you know, everybody to just, you know, just record deals flying into your door. And then it's crickets, it gets swallowed by the internet, and then you have to deal with that, you know, persistence and patience. You have to deal with it.
See how it all connects together?
Right. So what you will learn out of posting to the internet is so much more valuable than the record deal at that time for you, where you are. Right. We both have had projects that, you know, were released, and then, you know, they're swallowed by the internet, because the internet does do that. I mean, it moves really fast today. So it's important to keep your output, just keep putting things out there.
And there's an accountability factor to it too. If you're sitting by yourself, writing a song by yourself, producing it by yourself, I know from experience that I can tweak and rewrite and write and rewrite and tweak and mix it again and change the guitars, and I think that the mastering's not right there, or this, you know, till I'm blue in the face. When you collaborate, you are accountable to other people, okay? They are accountable to you, and that is a catalyst for growth, you know? You know what's the funniest thing is, I hate being uncomfortable. I hate it. I hate it. I love my house and my studio and my slip. I don't usually wear shoes. I always wear flip-flops. And today I wore shoes because I'm crazy apparently. But, you know, I like being comfortable. But guess what? Being comfortable does not help you grow. So being in a room with people that you're out of your element. You have to work harder. They're better than you. They make you better by being better than you, by making you work harder. You're accountable to them. They're accountable to you. Things get done when you are uncomfortable, when you are under pressure, okay? When there is a deadline. That's super important. Sidetrack. If you have a goal without a deadline, you have a dream, okay? If you have a deadline, you can get it done. And I think, and that is, I mean, honestly, probably of all the topics that we're going to talk about today, the most important probably for songwriting and production in today's world is learning how to collaborate. Absolutely.
And having somebody else in the room, like if I program a beat, like let's say, and I'm just by myself, I'm just by myself. But if a buddy of mine is behind on the couch, or somebody else is in the room, I'm like on my toes a little bit, and it'll just be better. You know? So same goes for writing and playing. Also, like when I do piano takes, I like somebody else in the room because I have an audience now. Me personally, I don't love like working by myself. I'm one of those people. Some people like to just go and just be alone.
I don't like people, so that's me.
Yeah, I like to have people in the room. I like people in the room. Also, as far as playing, I always liked playing in bands and, you know, with other people. When I'm by myself, I know what I can do, and I kind of run out of things to play. But with others, I have the other energy to feed off of. So I know that I'm like that. When I started working with Rodney, he saw that right away. So he would put me in rooms with other people. I just like other people in the room.
So collaborate.
Yes.
We want one more thing to talk about. We also want to leave some time for questions and everything. But we wanted to talk about presentation. Right?
Presentation, yes. When you present a song to somebody, to a label, A&R.
Listening sessions.
Yeah. Or even if you're pitching a song for a TV show. So in the 70s, you could, I mean, so I hear, you could submit a song, just a piano vocal or a guitar vocal. Can't do that anymore. It has to be fully produced, mixed and mastered. Which, you know, it sounds like that would be difficult to do, but with today's tools, you really can do it by yourself. So it's so important, first of all, the vocal. The vocal has to be loud, present, great takes, tuned. What else? Well mixed, sitting on top of the track. Like you can just, I mean, listen to what's on the radio. It's got to sound like that. And there are ways to achieve that. You can't say, you know, I don't do the computer stuff. There's no excuses anymore. You have to learn how to do all that stuff. So the vocal is first. Then the track. The track has to be well mixed. It just has to be great. You can't hand in a garage band loop anymore, you know, because I mean, if it's an A&R that we're talking about, they're listening to 500 songs a day, and a lot of those songs come from people like us who do this, you know, 12 hours a day. And when we sit on a track, I can sit on a track for 2 days tweaking and making it sound incredible, and then mixing it too. So you know, it's a competitive business. You have to compete and you know, make your product sound incredible. So presentation is everything.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point, because as we mentioned earlier, you're always auditioning, right? Every project you pitch to, you're always auditioning. There used to be a time, and there is still, to some extent, this feeling that a good song will shine through, right? A good lyric, a good melody, doesn't matter the production, doesn't matter, it's a good song will shine through. And yes, a good song does shine through, but it's not going to get, most likely not going to get cut. Or you know what, I don't want to be, I can't speak so much for the country world and country publishers, because there are definitely publishers out there who will listen to an acoustic guitar vocal and be like, oh my gosh, that's a great song. In pop music, in our world, that never happens. You are pitching against 100 other people that are, some of them have spent a lot of money on the pitch. Some of them are way better mixers than the guy you hired to mix. Some of them are better songwriters. They are putting competitive projects out there. That's why we keep saying this is competitive. You have to be competitive, not with the level that you are at right now or the people around you. You have to compete with the best of the best always. That should be your goal, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to scare you in any ways. It doesn't mean that you have to go and buy gear for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely not.
I have friends that are singer-songwriters and that pitch all the time, that have a $250 mic, and they had a mixing buddy come over and create a template for them in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever, and what comes out of their bedroom sounds awesome.
Right.
So
absolutely.
it is possible to do it with, you know, that's the good thing about today, is that anyone could do it. You just have to know how to do it or have someone help you.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, skill levels are going to vary, okay? And some people have, and I've actually, I think here in one of the workshops we've done before, somebody asked the question, how can I compete if I have limited financial resources and limited technical knowledge, right? So I have two answers for that. One, if you have limited technical knowledge, who cares? Get better technical knowledge. There's a million YouTube videos that will teach you how a plugin that you can buy for $50 and put on, say, the final master chain of your track will help you bring up the loudness level so it sounds as loud as everything else. You can see tutorial after tutorial, and there are websites after websites that will show you how to mix the kick drum, how to put the vocal. Technical skills, lack of technical skill is not a problem, it's an opportunity, okay? However, the other side of it, right, the financial aspect of it, right? How do I compete with somebody if I don't have the money to, say, buy the gear, charge it to other people, hire other people? Well, let me ask you this question, not to, you know, you paid money to come here. You pay money when you hire a singer. You pay money for a million other things. If this is your career, if this is your dream, you will find the way to do it. It might take you longer, okay? Maybe you can only afford to devote $100 of your income a month to music. Great, save up. Spend that time it takes you to save up, say, $500 to find a mixer, and you can get somebody to mix a song and sound bomb for $500, okay? Spend those 5 months writing more songs or bringing your level of technical ability up. But there's always a way, when it's a passion, when it's a dream, there's always a way to find the resources to get it done.
Can I tell a little story? I just remember this one. I wrote a song a few years ago. It was maybe 6 years ago. It was one of those, came to me at 1:30 in the morning. One of those songs that just pours out of you, you know? Like a very emotional moment. It just came out. And I was like, I'm going to give my all to this song. I'm going to just, you know, I spent maybe around $2,500 on it. I recorded strings and horns and a band and had 4 vocal sessions, 4 separate vocal sessions. Each session is like studio time, engineer. I didn't have the gear at the time. And paying the singer. And then I had 2 different guys mix it. It was like my song, you know? And at the time I was playing, and back to Babyface, I finally got to play with Babyface. And we had a show. My first show with him was in New York, just me and him. And we flew private, which was amazing. And we flew private to New York. And on the plane, I said, hey, Babyface. Now I say Kenny, because that's what everyone calls him. I said, hey, can I play you a song? And he said, yeah, sure. So I play him the song. He's sitting there with headphones. He's listening. And I was like, this is my moment. I'm going to get a deal after this. This is it. And he was like, yeah, go. And then a week later, we were in the studio, or sound check or something. And I said, so what'd you think of the song? He's like, what song? I'm like, let me play it for you again. So he listens to like 30 seconds of it. And he was like, yeah, it's cool. I said, you really liked it on the plane. He said, well, things sound good to me on private planes. That's literally what he said. Yeah. So nothing happened with that song. But the moral of the story, I don't know if there's...
You should definitely have called him Kenny and not Babyface.
Right. Play your songs on private planes. That's just the moral of the story.
Done. That's really the best advice, I think, Egan.
But I spend a lot of money on that song, and I've spent a lot of money on projects. I've put 6, 7 G's into a project, you know, mixing, studio time, musicians. Yeah, I just pour it back into it. You know, we tend to think that we need to spend our money on gear, but I spend my money on people too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On demo singers, because if you write a great song, like, we're not singers. So, you know, I can't pitch a song with my voice singing it. So I have to get the best representation of that song out there. So that sometimes means like going through a few singers and paying them. Sucks, but you gotta do it. And same with mixing it. So that's another way that collaboration is important. Collab with people who produce and mix or just mix, and, you know, form partnerships. You know, you can find a mixer that will maybe mix your songs for less, or will take some of the publishing, whatever you can work out, you know. But it's important that when you send your MP3 out there and when people press play, it is your best foot forward. That's what's important.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we planned this, but watch how they all connect, because he just said it, right? Maybe you don't have the resources, right? Well, patience will help you there, right? Maybe you don't have the technical know-how. Well, collaboration will help you there, okay? Maybe you don't have the technical know-how and the well, patience and a little bit of a curious mind will help you gain the technical knowledge. Both of us went to school at Berkeley, and both of us are producers / engineers, neither one of us studied that at Berkeley. I didn't study production in Berkeley.
That's right.
You know, were you
No, I studied music synthesis.
Right. I was. Let's see. I was jazz composition. I was performance. I was music education. I couldn't decide on a major, and I ended up having to graduate with a major that was professional music.
Yeah, and I dropped out.
Yeah. The point was that everything I learned, every bit of technical skill that I have now, is because I was in a situation where I was like, I don't know how to do that. Well, let me figure out how. I ask questions all the time. I read all the time. I can't tell you how many audiobooks I read before I understood anything that was written in there. Words like amplitude and this and that, I'm like, I don't know. I read them. And over time, you know, our brain makes the connections. The knowledge is formed, and we are able to get over that technical hurdle, which is really the only thing that's stopping you, right? Because you're all creative people. Just the technical hurdle to get it done.
Mm-hmm. And with collaboration, also a big part is standing, you know, behind somebody and watching them do something.
Oh, yeah.
So sitting behind your engineer for 10 years will make you a great engineer.
That's how I learned, yeah.
I was, you know, sitting behind Rodney Jerkins and watching him make beats is like, you know, a spiritual experience almost to watch that. And then I go home and it changes how I work. Also, when I was musical director, I had a mentor who's a genius at that, and I just watched him. And then he would be like, all right, you sit down and do it. And then I kind of sat down and did it. So that's another part in collaboration. You may be a strong lyric writer, but your melodies are not that strong, so you collab with somebody who has strong melodies, and then, you know, you kind of feed off each other. And same with production and mixing and all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the best thing you could do for yourself as far as collaborating with other people is look for people who are better than you. Mm-hmm. You know?
That's right.
Standing behind somebody and watching them work mm-hmm. is better than any class I ever took in Berkeley, mm-hmm. Anything I've ever, it's better, you know it. And if you have the ability, and if you're in a situation where you can do it and you don't understand something, ask.
Right.
Because you know what's funny? People who do things they love for a living love to talk about it.
Right.
I mean, I'm having a blast right now.
Right.
Right? But yeah, they loved it. And like, wait, how come you did that to the kick drum? I'm going, oh, well, let me tell you. And boom, knowledge. Right. Oh, how come that guitar sounds, well, I used this microphone, and I went into that preamp, and that knowledge.
Right.
Right? Knowledge is, I said collaboration is the most important thing. I'm changing my mind now. Knowledge is the most important thing. You know, gain the knowledge, gain the training.
And a lot of it you can't learn in a class. Like Pharrell never went to school for this. Right. You know what I mean? Like everybody I ever worked with never went to school for it. They just did it a lot and figured out a way that works for them.
And you know that to say one last thing about that is the whole idea of collaboration too. There's an aspect of it of mentorship. You know, if you have the ability, and not everybody does. Some people don't live in these areas, and some people don't have access to this. But if you have the ability to collaborate with somebody that you admire and somebody that takes a personal vested interest in you, in your career, okay? Jump on it. I don't care if, I've done a lot. I'm fairly successful. I like where I am in my career. But if I had the opportunity to, like this guy here, sit next to Quincy Jones and hear him talk, I would drop everything. Just to sit in a room with somebody you admire and just hear them talk about how they do it. Okay? It's the best masterclass you can get ever. So yeah, that's kind of what we were discussing is kind of like the main things we feel are important for songwriting and production careers. And so we wanted to open up for you guys if you have any questions. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to pause for a second. Can I give you the mic and then we'll use that one because I can't hear you. So I'm just going to give that to you.
I'm interested in your commitment to the 3-time rule on co-writing, and particularly in the spirit of working smart. When you work with a co-writer once and it really isn't gelling, have you guys really had experience where that second or third time there is a breakthrough and they become a great collaborator?
Absolutely. But before I fully answer the question, I said rule. It's not a hard, fast rule, but I've been in the room before, and I have been the person in the room before, where you have a session that's just not great, you know? And then you go and you have another session, and it's amazing. Because the reality is that everybody has off days. That's the truth. The reason I say that the 3 thing, oh, great, thank you. You got it there, thank you. The reason that I say that the 3-rule thing I use a lot is that if 3 times in a row you're having a bad vibe, you know, more likely than not, it's, you know, it's not going to work out. Think of it like dating, right? If you went on 3 bad dates, would you go on a 4th one? Right? You know? I mean, if you went on a really bad first date, would you go on the second one? Right? But see, I'm like, okay, we'll go on 2 more dates. But the thing is that it does change. Absolutely, absolutely. There's actually one of my earliest collaborations was in a band you might remember, and the first writing session I had with the singer was horrible. I mean, horrible. I was like, what is this person doing? What am I doing? I don't want to do this. Whatever. The second writing session I had with the singer wasn't meant to be a writing session. I was good friends with her roommate, and I was just kind of hanging out there, and she sat down and sang like just this little melody that was in her head, and we weren't doing anything. We were watching TV or something, and I just heard it, and so I picked up a guitar that was next to me, and I played a little riff, and before you know it, we were writing a song, and we ended up doing a full record, and we were in a band for a while, and she is the person that convinced me to move out to LA and actually try my hand at songwriting. So yeah, the first time might not work, maybe even the second time might not work, but for the sake of being smart and for the sake of the fact that I don't have as much time as I used to, if after 3 times I'm not loving it, I'm not feeling it, I won't do it again.
Yeah, and sometimes maybe you need like 6 months between sessions with a person, you know? Because people go through bad periods and, you know, then they come back and they're a different person and it's a new energy and, you know.
Can't stress the whole idea of energy enough in a session. I mean, it's everything, everything. It's so not quantifiable too, but if somebody has a bad mood, you know it, right? So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm just gonna leave that with. Yeah. Oh,
sorry.
Okay, cool.
I'm sorry.
I could use the exercise, you know. So.
I was just curious. After 1,000 songs, do you tend to always go with what you write next, what's new, or do you often go back through your older stuff to look for good material that maybe you went by too quickly?
I usually like to start right there, from nothing, rather than go back. Yeah, because I feel like my work expands on itself, so I like to start right there, new. That's me personally.
When many years ago in Boston, David Foster, were you there?
I think so.
Right. So David Foster said, don't be too precious with your art because there's always a better song. There's always a better song. Like, if I believed today that I've written the best song I'm ever going to write, I'd be done. Sidebar, though, what I do sometimes, periodically, is I do go through my back catalog and look at stuff that didn't get cut and look for new opportunities to pitch it to. Because music is cyclical, right? And music is, and there's so many different things that are looking for music all the time, right? And if somebody says to me, hey, we're working on this new project, this new film, and it's about this thing, and all of a sudden a little light bulb goes in my head, well, you know what? I have written the perfect song for that. I'll at least go back and listen to it just to find out. But more often than not, if I'm inspired by a new project, I want to write something new. I like new stuff, you know? I like a new song injects energy into you, you know? So, yeah. Back, sir.
Thank you guys very much for coming out and talking to us. I know we all really appreciate it. When you're doing these collaborations, do you ever put time limits on those kind of things? I know sometimes it could go into the middle of the night, but sometimes you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna, you know, you have a lot of things you're doing during your day, and you're collaborating with a lot of different people. Do you say, especially at an event like this, you say, all right, we're gonna put the timer 3 hours, 2 hours, see what we have from there, and we'll move on after that? And then also, when you guys were talking about, you know, trying not to put it and be too negative during a collaboration, who do you decide makes that call though? What if you're in an impasse? What if like both of you are having a problem, you know, coming up with an agreement? Who makes the call?
Do you mind if I? Okay, so I'm gonna start the first half of the question. If something is happening, like if something is cool is going on, you don't want to stop. I mean, I've been in the session where you walk in, and for the first 2.5 hours, you're just vibing on the other person or everybody in the room. People like each other. And you know, sometimes writing a song is 2 hours of therapy, right? That culminates with an idea, right? And honestly, more often than not, those beginning moments when you're writing with somebody new and you're getting to know them is where you will find the song. Not long ago, I don't know if she's even here, but there's somebody that I wrote with who was here, and yeah, she came in and she was discussing an issue she was going on, and she was just really mad about it. And she kept saying this phrase, and we just had to pause the whole thing. He says, that's the song. That's the phrase that pays. That's the hook, you know? And so something starts happening, you don't want to stop it. I will have canceled other things because I'm in a session. I'll be like, guys, I got to pause, and I got to text somebody and tell them I'm not making it because I'm digging what's going on here too much. And on the flip side of that, I have been in a session where you've been in the room for 6 hours, and it's like a root canal. And the reality is that if you feel that way, they also feel that way. So it's just about having the presence of mind of kind of reading the vibe and being like, you know what? It's just not the day. We're not vibing it. It's not working. Let's reconvene. As far as who makes the decision, that's an interesting question, right? Because, for example, if you're in the room with Rodney Jerkins and you really dig something and he hates it, I'm willing to bet Rodney probably wins. And while that tends to be the case, I don't know that that's necessarily the best approach always. I think I like to take perspective breaks. I think that if there's a good idea in the room and I'm not able to see it, but the other 2-3 writers, they can see it, maybe I'm not looking at it from the right perspective. Maybe I need to go get a cup of coffee and come back and listen with fresh ears. Maybe we need to walk outside and, you know, play ping pong. I have a tennis table. I just got a ping pong table outside the studio. Yeah, maybe we need to just, I don't know. I have a studio that I work in that has an Xbox, and literally we get stuck. We just sit there for then just play Tekken for a while. You know, maybe perspective breaks will help you see it. If there's still a situation where there's, say, 2 writers and they're just butting heads about it, I've been in that situation many times, you know, with who too. And it's just, the more you keep talking about it, the more you keep trying to be creative, what's going to end up happening is it's not going to be your idea or their idea. Through the conversation, through the process, something new will be born. Right. I have never been in a situation where 2 people disagree about something, respectfully, of course, you know, in a writing session, and talk it out, where somebody goes, well, it's just not going to work, screw the song, we're done. No, through the process, something new is born. And
this is kind of a easy hack that I use a lot, and you know, you can forget to do it, but I play the song from the beginning. I say, let's just perform it from the beginning, and we get to that point, and let's try this line, and then try, and usually it solves itself. A lot of times it does, not always, but performing it, and especially if the artist is there, the singer is there, and they're performing it as if they're performing it, the song will tell you what it needs. Right, because you can get psychological about it, and I should be this line or that, you know. But then just perform it, see how it sings, you know, how the words come out, how the melodies sound and feel in the throat. Like it solves itself a lot of times.
If the collaboration is right too, meaning if the connection is right, if the vibe is right, you guys at the end of the day have some sort of shared stylistic vocabulary, and so the right idea will eventually be apparent to everybody. You know? Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry. I think it goes to whoever has the mic. Yeah. You just have to just throw it across the room.
What you're sharing with us is amazing. I keep tearing up. Is
Thank
anybody
you.
else crying here?
Don't cry. We don't want you to.
Anyway, we really appreciate it. So building on the question of if you ever go back to your older material, I heard once that a song is like a piece of land, and you could build any kind of house on it and just tear it down. Do you ever go back and like reproduce something and make it more modern?
Yes.
We just talked about this morning, didn't we?
Yes. Like I open masters and redo stuff. That means you have to remix and remaster. But yes, the answer is yes.
We record the vocals. And
Yeah,
the
record
guitars.
vocals, reproduce, absolutely. One of my main collaborators and somebody I've been working with for many, many years is this guy whose name is Philip Lawrence. And I met Phil in '05 in Vegas, which is a whole other story. And Phil was a broke songwriter. I'll make it quick, but he met this other guy, and they formed a partnership, and the guy is Bruno Mars, and you know how that ends. And so Phil, you know, we work a lot together. We wrote a musical together. And that school, the Bruno Mars school, is that it's never done until it's done. It doesn't leave the door of the studio until they say so. And, you know, they'll open masters and rewrite the the pre-hook or whatever, which means like re-recording, you know. Yes, so, you know, you can get to the master and be like, you know what, it's not right. So they open it back up. So, yeah, I learned from them a lot about the process of making songs. And, you know, you want to have you don't want to overdo it, obviously. You don't want to keep tinkering with something for years. You want to know when it's right. But if it's not right, don't be afraid of reopening it, the sessions and redoing it.
Yeah, songs are never finished. They're, what's the term, abandoned?
Right. Yeah.
They're abandoned. But yeah, you could just keep going and doing it over and over again and reproducing it for whatever you want. But you're right in the sense that it's a piece of land more than just from the creative aspect of it. A song, providing you still own it and it's publishing, can do so many things. Copyright is an investment. Copyright is an asset. In fact, I'm not, like, for real, it's an asset. There are companies and there are investors that will buy your catalog. They will pay you up front for your catalog knowing that that catalog is going to make money, right? It is an asset. And a song that you wrote today and got placed someplace, as long as you still own the publishing, you can again place 10 years from now. Best example I have is Kelly Clarkson, Breakaway. You guys familiar with that song? Who did it first? Hilary Duff did it first. That song was written by, I think it was Matthew Gerard, and it was originally written for Lizzie McGuire. You guys remember that TV show? Right. Years later, yeah, we were just doing the question, yeah. Years later, it became, Kelly Clarkson. So yes, songs are like real estate in the sense that you can always build them and tear them down, and also in the sense that they live forever. So.
And another point to always releasing music, one of my collaborators, we made an album 4 years ago, and it went out and got swallowed by the internet, but now it was found by Adam Sandler and his people, and it's going to be the first song in the new Adam Sandler movie. So that was a nice email to get, like, hey, you guys remember this song? You want to check? We're like, yes, please.
Tell me, were you patient?
Yeah. I actually forgot about it. I forgot that song even existed.
We're also a comedy duo, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, have your songs out there, for sure.
So I think Jim told me that we have like 5 minutes, so maybe one more question.
I'm wondering what your approach is for writing lyrics and what resources or techniques you recommend for improving.
For learning how to write lyrics? Man, that's not going to be covered in 5 minutes. But you bring up a good question, and I wonder if he brings it up because we talked about it before, because I know Daniel, but I used to really suck at writing lyrics, and now I consider it to be my strongest songwriting skill. I actually remember the first full song that I wrote lyrics to in 24 Haviland Street. Wow. We had an apartment in Boston where the pipes were red hot. Mm-hmm. They were going through my room because it was a basement apartment.
Mm-hmm. We had rats.
We had rats, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember writing the first complete set of lyrics and reading it down and basically crumpling up, throwing it away, and going to sleep, covering it over my head and saying to myself, I'll never be successful, it's the end. And then I started working with better songwriters, okay? People who are better than me. And I started seeing, like, you know, that it's a mindset, right? And the first and most important thing that you have to get good at and understand is that it's about language, okay? You are a songwriter, but you're a writer, okay? And if you want to write language, you have to read language. So the first thing I would say, apart from if you're a songwriter, listen to songs, is read. I read a lot and all the time. And the more I read, especially considering since English isn't my first language, the more I read, the better I become at crafting metaphors, at describing things. What I mentioned earlier, object writing, I still do that every day. I'm at a point right now where I don't do it physically writing down. I do it, I have a lot of kids and I get them ready for school and all that, so I do it kind of in my head. And I have just crazy ones. I've written an ode to the sink that I'm doing the dishes in. I have, what was my most recent one? Not my most recent one that I really thought was great was my nightstand. I personified my nightstand and talked about how it's always there for me. You know, whenever I reach over, it's just there, you know? And so the idea is that reading, object writing, listening to pop music is a big thing. There are styles in writing. Some songs tell stories. Some songs are about just feelings. Some songs are stream of consciousness. Alanis Morissette will just like take her, or used to, I don't know if she's done anything recently, will just take her journal and put it out in song form. Reading up and learning about the basics of rhyme, okay? Everybody learns about rhyme. You know, Mary had a little lamb and had, you know, her fleece was white as snow, right? Everybody knows you learn that when you're in kindergarten, right? But you only learn that, you know, heart and a part rhyme. You only learn really perfect rhymes. Rhymes are so much bigger than that. Honestly, if you spend an afternoon on Rhyme Zone and Thesaurus, you won't believe the stuff you can learn from that, okay? 3-syllable rhymes, internal rhymes, rhymes that only appear when you put two words together that shouldn't rhyme with the word above it, and you put them together and then rhyme. Close-sounding rhymes, plosive rhymes, vowel rhymes. The resources are there. So to kind of generalize and say, I like Rhyme Zone, I like thesaurus.com, I read and I listen to music. And how did I become better at it? I took all that and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote until it just didn't suck.
Right. And I believe in immersing yourself in something. So there isn't just one book, one songwriting book. There's thousands of them, obviously. But I would say get all of them, read all of them. Just immerse yourself for a year or two in lyric writing, and you will become better.
Oh, and let me recommend one of them. I'm a big Sting fan. I love Sting. Love him, okay? He wrote 2 books. One of them is unreadable because it's so boring, in my opinion, right? Which is his, like, autobiography, which is great, but, you know, I don't really want to hear about his tantric sex or whatever, right? But the other one, he released a book of his lyrics. And it's all the most amazing songs Sting has done throughout his career. And next to them, a page describing the process of writing it, that he wrote, okay? That's not Broken Music. Broken Music is the other one, right? I forget the name. I'll look it up after and I'll tell you. But the stories are insane. He describes sitting on a park bench with his wife and staring into the sun and then blinking and seeing little black dots, right? And then turning to his wife and saying, "There's a little black dot on the sun today." Right? Which is the beginning of King of Pain, right? And he talks about how he wrote, if blood was flowing, flesh and still one, Fragile, right? And how it was written, I don't know if you guys remember, right after 9/11, that song all of a sudden became, it was eerie almost,
Yeah, I
if blood
read the
will flow
lyrics.
when flesh and steel are one, drowning in the colors of the evening suns, you know, something in our mind will, was it, for all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are, right? And it became super poignant. He wrote that song in the 80s about something that was going on in South America, you know, and he's really describing the whole thing and just getting into the mind of a songwriter. And he's not talking about the actual techniques where he goes, oh, I rhymed this word with that word, and then I rhymed this word with that word. He's talking about his creative path to get there. And that's invaluable. So read that book.
That's the one. Yeah, lyrics.
Lyrics, there you go.
Yeah.
It's called Lyrics. And yeah, and I'm seeing Jim, so thank you so much.
Thank you
Hey
so
guys,
much.
thanks so much.
Definitely-
Davy and Chen, thank you so much.
HitSongCoach.com.
Yeah, check it out.
Launch today.
Thank you
Thank you.
guys.